Welcome to Simplify to Scale, a show dedicated to helping you scale a high impact and high profit business that you love without all of the complexity and chaos that can keep you trapped in the day-to-day. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and with decades of scaling experience, I know what actually works and what's just hype. So if you are done with all of the one-size-fits-all scaling advice and all of the overnight success promises, and instead you want proven practical strategies that will help you simplify operations, elevate your leadership, amplify profits, and scale sustainably, let's dive in and get started.
Hey, y'all, it's Annie P. Ruggles, and I am here with my dear friend, Jessica D. Main. You may be wondering, where the heck is Krista? Well, she had to take some time away, but don't you fret. Jess and I are not ever going to let anything happen to this podcast, so we are back for another takeover of the podcast. And today, we're going to talk about the messy middle, but from a way that you might not have heard about it before. Because normally when founders talk about the messy middle or strategists talk about the messy middle, they talk about what that's like for founders. And so Jess and I have been the right hand, not only for Krista, but for so many businesses over the years. We've seen this messy middle in so many different flavors and shades. But today we're going to talk about some lessons learned, some best practices, and just some perspectives that maybe you haven't considered when your team is going with you through the messy middle. Hi, Jess.
Hello. I love this topic for multiple reasons, just because we know that the messy middle is inevitable. It's going to happen. It's a part of the learning process. And I think the educator in me actually loves the messy middle because that's when you learn the most and that's where you retain it. And it's more valuable than sometimes the things that you just get in an instant. So actually going through the struggle helps it be more of a lasting positive outcome.
Yeah, it's definitely hard-won wisdom, right? It
Yeah, exactly.
definitely is. I think sometimes in my own business, I see this, and I certainly feel like this has happened to me with more than one founder, but I feel like sometimes founders are so terrified, embarrassed, ashamed of admitting the mess of the messy middle. And so they're, without trying to lie or be deceitful, I'm not trying to insinuate that in any way, but they kind of just put on this brave face and be like, no, we're scaling. It's normal. Our leads are a little light right now, but we got a new launch coming up. And it's like, brave face is one thing, but if you're not showing your team your effort and your striving, they're probably being asked to do more because you're in the messy middle. And then you're up there sending this not correct idea of like, oh, everything's fine. We're going to ride the course. I'm not concerned about anything. Don't be worried. And they're going to be like, well, then why am I working a 16-hour day? Right? And so it's like
Yes.
that transparency, founders, really needs to come from you, because you might not want us. You're trying to protect us and make us reassured or make us feel like our work is more purposeful or any of those things. It's all good intentions. But if we don't know what's going on, we just feel the mess and feel the need to own and clean and claim the mess. And if we don't feel like you're acknowledging the mess and the good and the bad side of that mess, we start to feel like we're running a different company than you're owning, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's very true. And thinking through you saying it that way, it's interesting because that also creates, I think, a bit of a, like you said, like you're running like in a different company in a
Mm-hmm.
sense. But that also creates this dissonance between the founder and the team
Yes.
to the point where it's like it's not true. It doesn't feel true. It's not real. And you're invalidating their experience and how they show up every single day. And not only that, you're creating, in my opinion, a false narrative where, and then that false narrative can also breed unrealistic expectations.
Yes,
And so you
absolutely.
have that undue stress, that pressure that's put on the team in a manner where it's like it could have been prevented, even if you're not overly divulging information to a client. One of the things that I think it is critical is we're testing out this new system. We want to make sure that it's effective. That way we don't have any gaps in the process. So we may need an extra day to make sure that this is done in the proper way and our deliverable is really nice for you.
Yes.
That's one way to give a buffer so that the team can actually figure out what's taking place without having to deal with that stress and pressure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also not all changes are negative by any means. Sometimes the messiest middle feels the absolute most like an episode of Hoarders with like dead cats under a whole bunch of stuff when you're leveling up, right? And so you're gonna feel that stretch and it might feel like chaos when it really is just growing pains and the messy middle. And so if you freak out from the top, they're not going to know what the heck's going on. They're not going to know that it's because you're growing. They're not going to know that it's because it's new level, new devil. They're not going to know
Yep.
that it's because you finally hit the tipping point you've been chasing for 11 years. They're not going to know unless you tell them. And also, if you're leveling up, are you fostering their own growth? I hear all the time from people, again, super well intentioned people. They're not trying to be jerks, but they'll say to me stuff like, well, why would I get so and so trained in SEO? Because then they'll just leave and start their own thing. And it's like, okay, well, cool. If you help somebody find their great passion and it turns out to be SEO, awesome. But 9 times out of 10, that's not happening. And if we were in a corporate environment, they have things like tuition reimbursement. If we were in a corporate environment, they have things like internal promotions and training and conferences that people can go to and CEU credits that they can get because they understand that you don't invest in your team once, you invest in your team every single day. And that's the skills. And so from the team aspect, because you're leveling up, you may have learned something new. You may want to be on a new frontier. Your team may have all of the passion and all of the willingness and all of the skill, but none of the direction, or all of the willingness and they don't have the skill yet, right? And yet people say to me with this scarcity thing, well, I don't want to spend $2,000 certifying so and so because they'll just turn around and leave me. Number one, that's very, very short-sighted thinking. Number two, it almost never happens. And number three, like, trust yourself and your team more than that. But that's where I see is like at these messy middle chunks, like sometimes you got to level your skill set up. And sometimes if we're going to demand more of our team members, we have to make sure that we're feeding them enough to be able to go. Everything in my mind, because I'm a freaking shameless millennial, always goes back to Oregon Trail. And it's like, if you want to run your oxen on quick ass speed, you can. If you want to run your wagon train on no food, you can. And theoretically, that makes a lot of sense. You'll get there quick and you won't spend very much money. But everybody who's ever played Oregon Trail knows if you keep those oxen on strenuous or those portions on meager, you're all going to get dysentery and die. So, like, slow down, take your time, get some freaking skills, invest in your wagon, y'all, because we're all in it together and we all got to level up together. Everything's Oregon Trail with
Exactly.
me. I'm such a shameless millennial. What do you
No,
think
it's
about it?
funny, but I could visualize it in my head, and I could see it. I was like, "Dang, you took me back
Mhm.
on that one." Um,
Mhm.
but no, I definitely agree with you, and I do believe that it's like leading from a space of fear.
Mhm.
And one of the big things that I live for is empowering your team. And to me, it's way more cost effective to pour into the team that you have
Mhm.
than it would be to go through an entire process of hiring someone new, then going through and then paying for ads, paying for the job posting, going through the process. Because not only is it just financial spending, it is the literal time that you're losing by having more interviews because you're not
Mhm.
making money with clients or whatever the case may be. So it's way more cost effective to pour into the person that you have, build the relationship, empower them. And not only that, it's like the fear of what if they're just gonna leave? And if they do, that's one thing, but what if they stay and
Mhm.
end up being a rock star on the team, even more than what they were? And so what you're communicating, in my opinion, is that they're not worth pouring into. So that's another thing. It's like if they're not worth pouring into, then maybe that's a different conversation that needs to be had, but it
Mhm.
doesn't need to be centered around that alone. It's let me assess why I believe this, why I
Yep.
feel this way, and not worry, not center it around the fear, but think what would be required for me to feel that it was worth this investment of
Mhm.
whatever this development is. And honestly, feeding your team on a consistent basis, whether that's annually or otherwise,
Mhm.
it's critical because you want them to grow and be better in what they're doing. It's like to
Yes!
me, I'm allergic to being stagnant. So I
Exactly.
want to be better. I'm constantly going to want to grow. So if someone's not providing that for me, and if I even initiate and try to ask for it and then you deprive me of that, I'm more
Mhm.
likely to part ways because of that than I am
Yes!
because of you actually pouring into me.
1,000,000,000%. And then on the flip, when you invest in your team, a lot of the time you get a loyal little puppy that will follow you into the depths of hell forever. For freaking ever. Like, Jess, what year did you start working for Krista?
21 in January.
Yeah, same. Right? I
Yeah,
mean, like, that's 4 years, and in contractor time and in fractional time, which is what both of us are, that's like 75,000,000 dog years. Like, we
yeah,
hang out, and I happen to know because I know how the sausage at all of Krista's company is made, as does Jess, that, like, I've been in a whole bunch of different roles. She's been in a whole bunch of different roles. She couldn't be a CSOO yet because we didn't have the certification in place to make her one yet, right? Like, so all of these
right.
other things, but I will do whatever Krista asks me to do, and I know you will too, obviously with boundaries, obviously within lanes, right?
Of
But,
course.
like, I will follow that woman into fire because she has invested so much in me. She believes in me, she trusts me, and she trusts that I'm gonna hold her hair back when things get bumpy, right? And so, like, because I know I have that trust, and because I've
Hmm.
felt that investment, and because we've been together for so long, messy middle, I've already seen one, not my first rodeo. That's the other thing,
At
is,
all.
like, the longer that they're on, the better they get at riding the tide with you. So, let's make
Exactly.
Krista really uncomfortable before we wrap this up.
Okay.
What is one thing that you think Krista does really well to help us as a team go through all of these different changes? Because we've rebranded, we launched a whole new arm, we got all these new services and certs and all these things we have been, and like that's notwithstanding everything else that's going on in the world, okay, and your
Right.
life as a parent and blah blah blah. But what's one thing that you think Krista does really well when it comes to helping the team navigate the messy middle?
Um, by allowing the team to be messy.
Mhm.
So, letting it happen without intervening too much to where she disrupts that learning process.
Yep.
And so just as was thinking about like that whole just like arriving to the destination, but taking a different route and all of that, it's so important that Krista allows us to be able to figure it out, and as long as it's one of the thing with her, as long as you know the why behind it, you
Mhm.
can figure it out. And as long as she has enough of the trust to know, like, I know you're gonna be on brand, I know you're going to present things well. It's like she gives us feedback, but she doesn't intervene with the learning process.
Mhm.
And that allows me to feel free in my role to grow in a way to where I don't have to feel inhibited to not be who I am. Because one thing that
Mm.
I really, really know about myself is I do not like having to shrink myself in any circumstance. And so if I can't be who I want to be, or not even just a matter of a want, or if I'm not challenged myself to be able to grow and flourish, then I feel stifled and it's something that I don't like. I'm claustrophobic, and not just in a literal sense, but in a figurative sense. And so she is really good about allowing us to take it and run with it. Or if I were to say, "Hey, Krista, I wanna run this thing today." She would say, "Okay, go for it." And I will, just because of who I am, volunteer the plan. And
Mhm.
she may not even ask or solicit it, but I might say, "This is what my thought process is." And this is actually kind of what happened when we evolved with Soul Collective. It was
Mhm.
one of those things to where it's like, I was trying too hard to fit into a box that I was like, "Oh, this is kinda like the Krista box, and this is what feels
Yep.
good for Krista." But I was like, "Hey, I kinda wanna do this." She's like, "I don't want it to be like me. I want it to be like you."
Mhm.
And once she said that, it was a done deal, and that's what has allowed me to be able to grow in a way that feels really good and really rewarding for me, but she does that for every single person on the team, and that's what I love.
Absolutely. I could not have put that better myself. She's honest, she's open, she's real, she's transparent, she's generous. We love you, Krista.
We
But
do.
all of those things to say, like, team members, since we're talking to you today and we're talking to both, like, team members, if you're not being treated like that with your founder, see if you can get on their calendar, not to guilt them, not to stress them out, but just be like, "Hey, let's have a touch point. Let's talk about where we are right now and what I'm seeing, and I'd love some updates from you." And I think you can do that. I think that's okay. Just go out there and get on that calendar. And founders, for the love that's all that's good and holy, if you haven't checked in on your team members in a while, do it. They are your most valuable asset other than your own brain.
Exactly. This is very true.
All right, y'all. Well, this has been another Annie and Jess take over the Simplified to Scale podcast. Thanks so much for being here with me today, Jessica
Thank
Demane.
you. I loved it and I enjoyed it, as I always do. So thanks for joining me in this takeover.
And Krista will be back next week, as far as we know. So don't change that dial if people still say that. And thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Simplify to Scale. If you'd like to take things further, I invite you to join me for my Scale Smarter, Not Harder interactive workshop. Head to strategicopsinstitute.com/scale smarter to get registered. Not only will we dive into what might be keeping you trapped in the day-to-day, but you'll have the opportunity to ask me your questions live. If you got value out of today's episode, I'd love if you'd take a moment and rate and review the show so more businesses can learn to scale more simply and sustainably. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and I'll see you again next week.